Here we are with some mono black Eldrazi on the draw, and we're going to keep our opponent's mulliganed, so that's pretty good for us. Got a solid removal spell and discard spell, plus a couple creatures, and we always like having some sweet lands that we can use later in the game. Foundry of the Councils, Blighted Fen, and now we just drew Tomb of the Spirit Dragon, so we'll definitely be able to use and activate these lands later on. It looks like we're playing against hopefully something more control-y, which means we'll have a better chance of utilizing all of our cards, but okay, maybe it's not super controlling. It looks like prowess. So we're going to be taking one here, but we do have a spatial contortion we can use to take out the mage. So we'll probably want to go ahead and do that at our earliest opportunity, which is right now. Our other option would be to play Transgress, but this Storm Chaser Mage could get out of control, so let's deal with it while we can and hope our opponent doesn't have another creature to follow up with. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, because the deck doesn't play a ton of creatures. Swift Spear, it could be worse for us. It could be another Storm Chaser Mage, a Jace, or an Abbot. So Swift Spear, it's pretty good here, but it's not the worst of the prowess creatures for us. And our opponent has bottomed the card, but it looks like we're taking 6, which is pretty annoying. And so on our next turn, we basically have a bit of a choice here. And I think it's a close decision. We can either just simply play Matter Reshaper and have it available to block the Swift Spear, or we could transgress our opponent. It's kind of hard to know. The thing about transgress is it takes away Treasure Cruise, which is the card that's most likely to beat us in this scenario. So there's something to be said for it. Let's go ahead and do it. There's a reasonable chance it just whiffs, but it also might get a cruise. So we did get a cruise. So obviously it worked out in this spot. Our opponent does still have an Abbot. So expect to see the Abbot come down here, most likely. But if our opponent doesn't hit like another cruise, I think we're fine, because we can start deploying these Matter Reshapers and we have another removal spell. I think the Transgress decision was really close, because the only card that costs more than 3 or less in a lot of these lists is actually the 4 copies of Treasure Cruise, but Treasure Cruise is so good that it could just break a game open for the Prowess deck. So having played a reasonable amount with Prowess myself, pretty happy with the decision, but it looks like we're taking a bunch more damage right here. So that's pretty bad. We're down all the way to 7. Okay, Warping Whale. So we could use both of our removal spells to take out our opponent's 2 creatures, or we could deploy a Matter Reshaper. Once again, a pretty close decision. I think because we have the Blighted Fen, we want to go ahead and get rid of the creatures, because we can. The reason why I say because we have the Blighted Fen is we can use this to get rid of a potential 3rd creature. But the best draw our opponent has, if we kill both the Abbot and the Swift Spear, is going to be Jace or Treasure Cruise. So I think we're fine with giving our opponent essentially one big draw step this turn. If I think if our opponent doesn't draw something very powerful here, then we're definitely favored in the game. So we'll get rid of both of our opponent's creatures. That way, no slip through space type interactions can occur this turn. It looks like our opponent didn't draw anything particularly relevant, and so now we can finally play one of these Mana Reshapers. So, yeah. Interesting options for this game. And it looks like our opponent's starting to brick off a little bit, which is obviously good news for us. We've got this Tomb of the Spirit Dragon, which may be able to gain us some life in a little bit, but right now I think we want to just dump out the rest of our hand, and we're sitting in a pretty good spot. Our opponent could draw like a Storm Chaser Mage or Treasure Cruise, but we have Blighted Fen available, so Seagate Wreckage is a nice one. So yeah, let's just go ahead and crack in, and we're basically representing lethal next turn, so it's going to be tough for our opponent to do anything here. But you never know with a Treasure Cruise deck. There could be some weird things that happen, but nope, it looks like our opponent did actually brick. So got that first game, and now we have plenty of options after board. Some removal, Ruinous Path, Ultimate Price, and Languish. There's Kalitas. Definitely don't want to bring in Self-Inflicted Wound. I think we actually want to take out the Transgresses, even though we did successfully transgress something that last game. Doesn't seem amazing in the matchup, and we're probably going to board out some amount of creatures here, because we want to just kill off all of their dudes, essentially. That's our main route to victory. So, like, Mimics and Hangerbacks, they're okay, but they're not necessary. They're not completely necessary. So let's bring in the Ultimate Prices. Duress is basically a strict upgrade to Transgress here, because it can take Treasure Cruise along with a bunch of their 1 and 2 mana cards. And then we may want to board in Kalitas, because it is quite strong in the matchup. Not necessarily all three. You definitely want these Ruinous Paths. And then we may even want Languish. So let's look at what we're working with here. We've got 14 creatures. No, sorry, we've got 18 creatures. Forgot about Bear of Silence, which is very good against blue-red prowess. So I don't know if we want any more of these 4s. Languish could be a 2-for-1, but it's another 4-mana card. We've already got 6 4-mana spells here. So, yeah. I kind of just want to try this for game 2 and see where it takes us. So, hopefully we draw a bunch of removal. After board, we have even more removal. And so, game 1, we were lucky enough to take care of all of our opponent's creatures, and there's an even higher likelihood of that happening for game 2. We are going to keep this hand even though there's only 1 actual removal spell. We have 2 Blighted Fens and double Reality Smasher. So it looks like our late game is pretty solid, and we drew a 3-drop here, so it's pretty likely our opponent's going to play a 2-drop here. Either Jace or Storm Chaser Mage. Looks like probably Jace here. And we're just going to kill it. No, it's going to be Storm Chaser. Okay. So, yeah, we want to kill it during our turn so our opponent doesn't have any opportunity to play a spell and make the Storm Chaser Mage big enough to survive the Spatial Contortion. So, now if our opponent does have more creatures, we're really hoping if they're either like Swift Spears or Abbots, so we can block with our Mana Reshaper. This is Elusive Spellfist, which has actually become relatively popular in these types of decks. But yeah, we're just gonna play Mana Reshaper here, even though it's pretty likely our opponent has a non-creature spell to make the Spellfist unblockable. We can still hope, obviously, that we get to block with our Mana Reshaper. Anytime you get to trade Mana Reshaper for any spell of your opponent, it's very good for you. That's something I've learned playing Eldrazi decks from standard to modern, is that you just want Matter Shaper to die. It essentially means you're drawing a free card, but it's a little bit better because sometimes that card goes straight into play. So looks like maybe our opponent's slowing down a little bit. Could have like a Treasure Cruise in hand, but only one card in the graveyard at this point. So pretty happy to untap here. Now we have Duress, so if our opponent does have a Cruise, we can take it. Okay, it's Disdainful Stroke, Abbot, and Slip Through Space. So, Disdainful Stroke can counter our Reality Smashers, which is pretty good. Slip is also really good, though, because it makes these Spellfists unblockable, draws our opponent a card. I kind of want to take the Slip Through Space, but it's close, because we do want to play Reality Smasher next turn, and our opponent can counter it, but let's just go ahead and take the Slip Through Space, because right now our opponent doesn't actually have spells that they can use to make these unblockable. So we're kind of hoping our opponent doesn't draw a non-creature spell, and we can just keep playing our slow, passive game plan until we get these. We're able to sack these Blighted Fens and get one Reality Smasher into play. So that's the plan. And here's Abbot coming down. Hoping our opponent doesn't hit a non-creature spell, but Roast is... it could be worse. It means our Matter Shaper is probably going to die right here. Our opponent's going to get in for 4, but we're going to get a flip off the Reshaper, and there's a number of nice ones we could flip here. Let's see what we get. Okay, Ruinous Path, so a removal spell, and now our opponent's tapped out, which means we can land this Reality Smasher knowing that our opponent has Disdainful Stroke, and even better, we drew Thought-Knot Seer. So let's just go ahead and play the Thought-Knot. We'll take the Disdainful Stroke if there's nothing better to take, and Swift Spear... I don't think it's better than the Stroke, so we'll take the Stroke and hope, once again, our opponent doesn't draw a non-creature spell. Like something like Treasure Cruise would basically be extremely good right here, but it looks like our opponent was not that lucky. So I think we want to take this opportunity to play one of our Smashers, and then we'll have Ruinous Path for next turn. We could also attack with the Smasher. So I think we want to play it. I don't know if we want to attack with it, but I think there's a reasonable chance that we want to get a clock on our opponent, and that we do actually want to attack with it, so let's try it. Because now we have a second Smasher, so if our opponent tries to kill us, and we save our Thought-Knot, we can just play the Smasher and win next turn. So we don't want our opponent to draw something like Roast. Abbot into Storm Chaser Mage. Okay, so Storm Chaser is going to come down here, but our opponent doesn't have any great attacks besides maybe hitting us for 1 with the Storm Chaser Mage. So this game is pretty interesting. We can play Reality Smasher and smash in, which is pretty aggressive. We could also just attack with this one Reality Smasher and then Ruinous Path something or Blighted Fence something. Yeah, I kind of like just attacking with the one Smasher here. Let's try that. Okay, no blocks. And so we might as well go ahead and awaken our Ruinous Path. Alright, let's try it. We're hoping once again our opponent bricks this turn, because next turn we'll be able to turn the corner. And I think the creature we want to get rid of is probably the Storm Chaser Mage. But I could see arguments for Abbott as well. Alright, let's go ahead and take care of an Abbott. I don't think the Mage is super threatening because it's just one per turn. And so yeah, now we have a 4/4 we can attack with on our next turn. Plus we have our second Reality Smasher. So yeah, I think we wanted to get that Abbott off the table. And let's see what our opponent has top decked here. Could be a Slip Through Space. Doesn't kill us this turn. Treasure Cruise would be pretty good. And it looks like it might be a Cruise because our opponent's tapping 3 with 5 cards in the graveyard. So it is Treasure Cruise. That's pretty bad because there's a lot of cards our opponent can now draw off the Cruise which kill us. So we have our Thought Knot here available to block. Swift Spear does not kill us, but this next spell might. Yeah, it's a Slip Through Space. So we're going to be taking 9. Yeah, I think we're just dead because of that. That second Swift Spear plus the Slip Through Space. So yeah, we can block the 3/4 Swift Spear and we're just dead. So okay, I mean, I don't really regret how we played that one, but sometimes that can happen. As I was talking about before with Treasure Cruise, Cruise is just super powerful. That whenever the prowess deck draws it, they can just have a huge turn, and that's kind of what happened. They had already a bunch of creatures in play, so maybe that's a lesson learned and we want to board in Languish, because obviously Languish would have been really good there. Or maybe that's just a corner case scenario. Pretty interesting. We haven't drawn Bearer of Silence yet, which would be really good. So yeah, I wonder if we want to sideboard in these Languishes on the play. Maybe we do. We haven't actually seen Jace from our opponent, though, and I kind of like having Reality Smasher in our deck because it can just win the game quite quickly. Alright. Let's rebuy it one more time. I think we were pretty unlucky to lose that one, but the matchup is swayy, to be honest with you. Like, Blue-Red Prowess can kill you from a very high, when you're at a very high life total. But it was pretty much just that one opportunity, that one turn that our opponent had. Otherwise, we would have turned the corner by playing our second Reality Smasher. Our opponent was at 6. And we would have gotten a big attack in, and pretty much our opponent wouldn't have been able to come back at that point. So here we have no black mana. Pretty unfortunate, but we did keep the hand because we have Smasher. We have a Spatial Contortion, which we can just fire off here. I think we want to, even though we have Ultimate Price, which we'd rather use, but we don't have the black mana. Because now we can't kill a Storm Chaser Mage. But yeah, okay, so pretty much all in on drawing a land on our next turn to get this Thought Knot on the table. Now I see part of the issue with having Kalidas in this deck is sometimes you won't have the black mana, even though it's a monocolored deck. Duress isn't really a big problem. One of our ultimate prices hits the bin, but we can live with that for sure. And it looks like, yeah, there's the Storm Chaser Mage. So, really hoping for any land, preferably black. Did not get there, of course. Second Thought Knot. So, pretty rough spot here. Not unwinnable, I wouldn't go that far, but we're definitely behind. And this is where, yeah, this is where our opponent can just kind of go off a little bit with a bunch of prowess triggers. And we'll probably have one more opportunity to get back in the game to draw a land on our next turn. See if we draw it. Okay, so we did. So we can play a Thought Knot. Still no black, unfortunately. And we see a handful of gas. I think we have to take the Treasure Cruise. And we'll just have to remember we're playing in Slip Through Space, Negate, and Disdainful Stroke. So all spells for our opponent, which is pretty bad, but we have to take the cruise. We saw in Game 2 how bad Treasure Cruise can be. And if our opponent taps blue, they only have one blue, so we're hoping that they don't draw a second blue, because that way they'll have Disdainful Stroke up for our next play, which is pretty likely to be our second copy of Thought Knot Seer. Or Reality Smasher, depending on what we want to do. But yeah, I mean, this Kalidas is basically dead in our hand. It's not really going to impact the game at this point. So yeah, looks like we're going to be taking 4 this turn, and then hoping to draw a land. There it is. There's the swamp. So that's good news. And we may just want to go ahead and play Reality Smasher and Smash here. I think we do, actually. I think we want to just try to race a little bit and hit our opponent for 9. We could play this Thought Knot, but it's a lot slower than just playing Reality Smasher. So I kind of like playing Smasher. We can also, if we draw another land, we can actually sack this Mirror Pool and put a copy into play of Reality Smasher and then potentially win right away. Or we can put in a copy of Thought Knot. So still hoping for more lands. And it looks like our opponent may have drawn a Cruise, which is pretty good, but it also means our opponent's pretty unlikely to win this turn. So unless they, yeah, so pretty unlikely for our opponent to win this turn. So if we draw a land here, I think we're going to win. Otherwise, we're in a rough spot still. That's kind of what it looks like, but our opponent's got a stack of cards in hand, but we're actually, because of our play with Reality Smasher, we're in a reasonable spot as far as the damage race. Our creatures on board can only bring our opponent to 1, but if we make another Reality Smasher, then we are going to win the game. If our opponent makes this attack and we draw a land, we will win the game. So that's pretty good news for us. Okay, so it looks like our opponent's just hoping we don't draw a land or another Reality Smasher. Seems like a reasonable gambit, which paid off. So now, okay, back to the drawing board, kind of. We can play this Thought Knot and take something out of our opponent's hand, which seems okay. We could also Ultimate Price plus activate Tomb of the Spirit Dragon. That also seems reasonable. And then if we made that play, we would probably attack with both. So it's pretty close call. Playing the Thought Knot does mean that we get to look at our opponent's hand, which seems reasonably valuable at this point, but it also means that we don't get to gain the life with the Tomb or get rid of our opponent's Monastery Swift Spear. Alright. Yeah, this is coming right down to the wire, that's for sure. Alright, let's go ahead and Ultimate Price the Monastery Swift Spear, I think. Yeah, I think it's close, but we're just going to kind of hope our opponent doesn't kill us. It's a close decision, but yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. And if our opponent has Titan Strength plus Teamer Battle Rage, obviously we're dead. Otherwise, like, there's not that many combinations. Double Titan Strength would kill us. Our opponent could have another Monastery Swiftspear plus some other stuff. But the good thing about making this attack is our opponent actually can't fetch anymore or take damage off their Shivan Reef. And we know our opponent has Negate and Disdainful Stroke in hand, which are two cards that are not very relevant right now. So it looks like our opponent's gone into the tank a little bit, which hopefully is good news from our perspective. And so yeah, it looks like actually our opponent was not able to find anything. And so rather than playing whatever's in their hand, it looks like we took it down. So tough match, but pretty happy with how it turned out.